2:41 a.m. off the Venezuelan coast. The sea is flat, almost black, broken only by a thin line of lights from a sleeping port city. On one radar screen, a contact blinks, then fades. On another, a heat signature blooms for just a second too long. Radios crackle. Someone asks for confirmation. No one answers fast enough. A warning shot cuts the darkness. Then a second reply flashes back from the shoreline. This is not a declared war. There is no announcement, no siren, no press conference waiting at dawn. Yet in that moment, U.S. and Venezuelan forces are exchanging fire during a night operation neither side fully controls. And what happens next turns a tense encounter into chaos within minutes. The exchange of fire off the Venezuelan coast did not emerge from a vacuum. It was the product of years of unresolved tension operating below the threshold of open conflict. For more than a decade, relations between the United States and Venezuela have existed in a state of strategic hostility without formal war. Sanctions, intelligence pressure, naval patrols, counter-narcotics operations, and accusations of covert activity have created an environment where military forces regularly operate in proximity, often without direct coordination or trust. The maritime domain is especially volatile. Venezuela views its coastal waters as a front line of sovereignty shaped by fears of infiltration, smuggling, and regime destabilization. U.S. forces operating under international maritime law and regional security mandates see the same waters as critical corridors for surveillance, interdiction, and deterrence. These overlapping missions create friction long before any shots are fired. Night operations amplify that friction. Darkness compresses decision-making and magnifies uncertainty. Visual confirmation becomes unreliable. Radar returns overlap. Thermal signatures blur civilian and military profiles. A contact that appears benign at long range can become threatening within seconds, especially when communication channels are delayed or degraded. Both sides train for restraint. Rules of engagement are designed to slow escalation graduated responses, warning procedures, confirmation requirements. But those rules assume clarity. They assume time. And during night operations, time is the one resource commanders rarely have. Compounding the risk is political pressure on both ends. For U.S. commanders, any incident risks regional destabilization and international scrutiny. For Venezuelan forces, perceived hesitation can be interpreted internally as weakness or loss of control. In such an environment, even defensive actions carry strategic weight. This is why brief, localized exchanges matter. Not because they signal war, but because they reveal how close modern militaries operate to unintended escalation. When forces meet under darkness, uncertainty becomes the real adversary. And on that night, uncertainty was already winning. Preparation for night operations rarely looks dramatic. It is quiet, methodical, and dominated by uncertainty rather than confidence. On the U.S. side, the mission parameters were deliberately narrow. Assets in the area were operating under limited exposure rules, supported by layered intelligence rather than direct confrontation. Maritime radar, airborne ISR platforms, and passive sensors provided a fragmented picture good enough to detect movement, but rarely precise enough to confirm intent. Contacts were tagged, monitored, and reassessed in short cycles, each update slightly outdated by the time it arrived. The objective was not engagement. It was presence, observation, and control of space without escalation. Every decision flowed from that constraint. Across the water, Venezuelan forces were working with a different set of assumptions. Coastal surveillance units and naval patrols had been on heightened alert for weeks, driven by intelligence warnings about foreign incursions and internal pressure to demonstrate vigilance. Equipment varied in age and capability, but the expectation was constant, unidentified movement near sensitive waters was a potential threat until proven otherwise. Night compounded the problem for both sides. Visual confirmation was limited to unstable optics. Radar contacts overlapped with civilian traffic. Thermal signatures lingered just long enough to raise suspicion, then disappeared. Each side was seeing the same environment, but interpreting it through different risk lenses. Communication chains stretched thin. Requests for higher-level confirmation moved slower than the situation on the water. Junior officers and watchstanders carried disproportionate responsibility, forced to balance restraint against the fear of being caught unprepared. Every delay felt dangerous. Every assumption felt irreversible. In theory, technology should have closed the gap. In practice, it widened it. More sensors meant more data, and more data meant more ambiguity when signals disagreed. By the time the first warning measures were authorized, both sides had already formed internal narratives about what they were facing. Neither was fully correct, but each believed hesitation carried greater risk than action. That belief set the conditions for what followed. The moment escalation began was not marked by aggression, but by acceleration. A surface contact closed distance faster than expected. On U.S. displays, its profile shifted speed, increasing course tightening. On Venezuelan screens, a shadow appeared where none had been moments before. Each side interpreted movement through its own assumptions, and both concluded the same thing at nearly the same time the situation was changing. A warning was authorized. A single round cut across the water, deliberate and controlled, fired wide of any hull. The intent was unmistakable to the crew that fired it. Signal presence, force a pause, create space. But in darkness, intent does not travel with the projectile. What arrived instead was shock. From the shoreline, a response flashed back. Short bursts, not sustained fire. Not aimed to destroy, enough to say, "We see you too." Radio traffic spiked instantly, reports overlapped, bearings conflicted, commands came in fragments: hold position, adjust course, stand by. Each order was correct when issued. None arrived in time to prevent the next decision. For several tense minutes, U.S. and Venezuelan forces exchanged fire in bursts measured in seconds. Tracers arced briefly, then vanished into the dark. No one advanced. No one withdrew cleanly. Each side acted defensively, reacting to movement rather than executing a plan. On the U.S. side, watchstanders struggled to confirm whether additional units were entering the area or whether sensor noise was amplifying the chaos. Airborne ISR feeds lagged. Radar tracks multiplied. A contact lost for 3 seconds reappeared at a different bearing, triggering fresh alerts. The risk was no longer the vessel in front of them, it was misidentifying something else entirely. Along the Venezuelan coast, commanders faced a parallel crisis. Shore batteries remained silent, held back by orders to avoid escalation. Patrol craft maneuvered cautiously, unsure whether they were facing a single unit or the leading edge of something larger. Communications between units were intact, but certainty was not. Both sides believed the other might escalate next. That belief drove restraint and paradoxically sustained the exchange. Each burst of fire was calibrated to deter, not dominate. Each pause was filled with expectation that the next move would be worse. Then something shifted. A higher-level directive finally cut through the noise. Fire was halted, movement slowed, sensors were reset. Units pulled back just enough to re-establish distance without signaling retreat. The exchange did not end dramatically, it simply ran out of momentum. Silence returned, unevenly settling in layers. First the guns, then the radios, then the sensors. In hindsight, the engagement lasted only minutes. No confirmed casualties, no decisive outcome. But the brevity was misleading. In those minutes, command authority thinned, assumptions hardened, and escalation hovered one misstep away. What made the encounter dangerous was not how much fire was exchanged, but how close both sides came to losing control of it. The most critical actions of the night happened after the firing stopped. On the U.S. side, defensive posture tightened immediately. Electronic warfare systems shifted from passive monitoring to selective emission control. Radar power was adjusted not to search farther, but to search cleaner. Operators narrowed filters, stripped away clutter, and rebuilt the tactical picture from verified tracks only. The goal was no longer dominance, it was mistake prevention. Air assets already on standby did not launch. That decision mattered. Scrambling aircraft would have signaled intent far beyond the scale of the encounter, forcing a response neither side had planned for. Instead, commanders chose presence without visibility, capability held in reserve, deliberately unseen. Along the Venezuelan coast, a similar calculation unfolded. Air defense units remained silent. Fire control radar stayed cold. Patrol craft maintained distance, but did not disengage completely. By holding systems at readiness without activation, commanders preserved deterrence while avoiding irreversible signals. This was escalation management under pressure. Both sides understood that the next layer of defense missiles, aircraft, shore batteries would shift the encounter from ambiguity to confrontation. Defensive restraint became the most aggressive move available. Communications channels above the tactical level activated quietly. Not negotiations, not apologies, clarifications. Signals designed to confirm that neither side intended to push further into the spiral. What prevented chaos from becoming conflict was not superior firepower, but disciplined control over it. Systems built to fight were deliberately restrained. Humans overrode automation. Assumptions were questioned in real time. The night did not end in victory for either side, it ended in containment. And that containment would shape everything that followed. What unfolded off the Venezuelan coast was not a failure of technology, it was a collision between capability and ambiguity. Modern naval engagements rely on layered sensing surface radar, infrared electronic support measures, and airborne ISR. At night, these layers do not reinforce each other evenly. Radar provides range and bearing but struggles with sea clutter. Infrared highlights heat but exaggerates contrast, making brief signatures appear more decisive than they are. Electronic sensors listen well, but only when someone is transmitting. During this encounter, both sides operated in partial silence. Emissions were limited, systems were deliberately restrained. That created gaps, small ones but enough to distort intent. A contact that accelerates by a few knots can trigger assumptions of attack posture. A heat bloom lasting 1 second longer than expected can be interpreted as weapons activation. In daylight, visual confirmation resolves these ambiguities. At night, they compound. This is where human decision-making becomes decisive. Operators are trained to interpret sensor fusion, but fusion depends on time. In compressed timelines, seconds, not minutes, humans default to pattern recognition. Past encounters doctrine and threat libraries fill the gaps. That is efficient. It is also dangerous. Tactically, both sides employed what could be described as calibrated signaling. Warning shots were fired wide, bursts were short. No system escalated beyond small arms or deck-mounted weapons. This was not indecision, it was intentional ambiguity designed to deter without forcing commitment. From a cost perspective, the restraint was striking. No missiles were activated, no aircraft launched, no fire control radars locked targets. Each of those steps carries not only tactical consequences, but political ones. Once a radar locks, the encounter is no longer local. Once an aircraft launches, it becomes visible far beyond the horizon. The engagement also highlights a growing challenge in modern warfare: automation versus authority. Automated systems are faster, but they are binary. Humans are slower but capable of restraint. That night, humans stayed in the loop, overriding escalation pathways that technology could have taken in milliseconds. The lesson is not that night operations are inherently unstable. It is that stability now depends less on overwhelming force and more on interpretive discipline, the ability to pause, reassess, and choose not to act when technology suggests otherwise. In that sense, the most advanced weapon used during the encounter was judgment. By sunrise, nothing appeared changed. Ports reopened. Shipping lanes remained active. Official statements, where they existed at all, were carefully worded: routine patrols, standard procedures, no escalation. To the outside world, the night passed without consequence. Strategically, that perception was misleading. Encounters like this reshape behavior long before they reshape policy. For naval planners, the incident reinforced how quickly proximity operations can slide from monitoring into engagement when ambiguity replaces clarity. Distances that felt safe in daylight became unstable after dark. Timelines once measured in minutes compressed into seconds. For Venezuela, the exchange underscored both deterrence and vulnerability. The ability to respond mattered, but so did the realization that escalation control required restraint as much as readiness. Coastal defense without coordination risks triggering responses it cannot contain. For the United States, the lesson was quieter but no less significant. Presence alone does not guarantee control. In contested littorals, information dominance degrades faster than firepower. The margin for error shrinks not because of enemy intent, but because of environment noise and human interpretation. At a broader level, the incident added weight to an uncomfortable trend in modern military affairs. Most dangerous moments now occur below the threshold of war. They are not declared. They are not planned. They unfold in darkness, fog, and assumption. Each side left the encounter with new internal rules, adjusted ranges, revised procedures, stricter fire control thresholds. None of these changes required public acknowledgement. All of them mattered. The exchange did not alter borders or alliances, but it altered expectations. And in international security, expectations often decide what happens next. The night off the Venezuelan coast did not produce a winner. No ships were sunk, no territory changed hands, no official escalation followed. Yet to measure the encounter by those standards is to miss its significance entirely. What mattered was how close control came to slipping and how deliberately it was pulled back. Modern military power is often described in terms of reach, precision, and speed, but this incident exposed a different axis of strength restraint under uncertainty. Both sides possessed the capability to escalate rapidly. Neither side lacked options. What prevented chaos from hardening into conflict was the decision repeated again and again not to take the next irreversible step. That decision is becoming rarer and more valuable. As operations move closer to contested coasts, into crowded seas, and beneath political thresholds, the most dangerous moments will not announce themselves. They will look like this one brief, confusing, deniable, and easy to misread after the fact. Technology will continue to accelerate timelines. Sensors will grow more sensitive. Automation will promise faster answers, but none of those developments eliminate the core risk revealed that night, the human tendency to fill gaps with assumption. The lesson is not that force should be avoided. It is that force without interpretive discipline becomes noise. Firepower without judgment creates momentum that no one fully controls. The exchange of fire lasted minutes. Its implications will last far longer. In the future, conflicts may not begin with declarations or invasions. They may begin with a blinking contact, a delayed confirmation, and a decision made in darkness. Understanding those moments is no longer optional. Bye for now.